Welcome to the Embodiment Matters podcast with me, Erin Rabke, and my beloved Carl Rabke. We don't have the luxury of living in ordinary times, but rather, we live in extraordinary ones, where the way we live in the next decade will make a huge difference in the future of life on planet Earth. We aspire in this tapestry of rich conversations drawn from a variety of wise perspectives and beings to share resources that can help you embody the wisdom, compassion, and skillful actions that are needed during these times. You can find out more about our classes, our 13-month depth training, Refugia, and sign up for our beautiful newsletter at embodimentmatters.com. We are 100% listener funded and ad free and invite you to consider becoming a supporter of this podcast with a donation. You can find more at embodimentmatters.com/podcast.
Welcome, listeners. My name is Alexandre, and I'm a dear friend of Carl and Erin. I'm delighted to introduce this episode of Embodiment Matters called Becoming Refugia. If you're a frequent listener, you might be wondering why you're hearing my voice instead of theirs. Well, recently I had a revelation that my dear friends Erin and Carl, who are such incredible teachers and facilitators, have so much wisdom and presence to transmit to their community. On this podcast of Embodiment Matters, they often interview luminaries and seasoned, wise elders. And yet, after decades of devotion to their paths, the Embodiment Matters podcast has only been infused with a small fraction of what they have to pour forth. Having the privilege of being their dear friend over these years, I recently felt the call to ask them if they would be open to being interviewed by me. Not only to share the joy of our deep conversations, but also to draw out the good wisdom and knowledge they have gathered through their fidelity to being part of the Great Turning. So, this conversation is my gift to Erin and Carl, and also to all of you listening and a part of this community. In this conversation, we journey through many themes ranging from the beauty of family, kinship, and community, what it means to engage in mature friendship, and we also chat about a theme that is very dear to their hearts, and also the name of Erin and Carl's upcoming 13-month depth training, which is called Refugia. I hope you enjoy what Carl and Erin transmit in this interview as much as I did. It was truly a gift, and I trust it will nourish you also. If you'd like to know more about Erin and Carl's work or their upcoming 13-month depth training called Refugia, you can head to their website, embodimentmatters.com/Refugia. If you'd like to connect with me and my offerings, you can reach me at ahealingbridge.com. If you're moved by this podcast, I encourage you to share it with your community and anyone else who might resonate. It's always beautiful to spread the seeds of medicine. Again, thank you for being here. Enjoy the conversation. So welcome everyone. What a surprise, hey, to have me interviewing you, dear brother Carl and dear sister Erin. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to sit with you both and to interview you for a change. Yeah, I guess for everyone listening, I just want to mention that I had this revelation recently that as friends and as community members and colleagues, I've admired you both so much over the years, and it began from far away online, and I knew from the beginning that there was some special connection that was waiting to be claimed. And over the years, just getting to know you both as humans, your bodies of work, the medicine that you both bring, how you parent, how you show up as friends. I just thought to myself, wow, you interview all these incredible, amazing elders and mentors and teachers, and that's what you both are. I see you both as that, as elders and dear friends. And so I wanted to gift your community with some nice, luscious time to hear from you both and gather in their spirit baskets your medicine and your knowledge and wisdom. You have decades of experience, and I just love the conversations that we have. There's a kind of remembering that gets kindled. So, first of all, thank you. Thank you for taking the time and saying yes to doing this on your podcast.
Thank you so, so much, dear brother. Yeah, as you were talking, it was reminding me of where this podcast came from, which was just when Erin and I would have friends over or be hosting teachers and hanging out on our red couches or having conversations on the porch, and we'd think like, "Oh, that was so beautiful. I wish everyone could hear this conversation." And really that's how this podcast grew, of the conversations we're interested in having. And I'm so excited to be in conversation with you.
I just want to say thank you so much. We love you so much. I remember too that feeling of knowing each other a little bit, from afar online, and am so grateful we've claimed that connection we share. And thank you so much, Alexandre, for wanting to have this conversation with us. Just delighted. Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm. Absolutely. It's such an honor. I was thinking maybe to begin with, for those maybe who might be new to Embodiment Matters, new to your work, and even people who have known you for quite some time, I always appreciate the refreshing kind of now we're in this moment and we're all changing, right? And evolving in each moment. And I'm curious if you could both briefly just share a little bit about who you are and perhaps what's lighting your soul on fire to serve in these times?
Okay, I'll begin. I think it's always good to just pause and get these responses freshly from in there. Yeah, what's lighting my fire right now is just the urgency of these times and like the future for our son and these like mythic, crazy, precarious, beautiful, mysterious times that we're in and what is being called forth from each of us and what are we invited to tend. And, as I look back these last 30 years and these, seemingly different paths that have called from somatics and the Dharma and soul work and deep ecology and really feeling the necessity of all of these weaving together to meet what's being asked of us right now. I know for me, well, for both of us, freedom has always been like a central, there are lots of central threads that have moved through those, but freedom is one that comes to mind, like freedom of movement and being in a body and freedom from the views and limitations of the overculture. And more recently, I've really been drawn to this realm around freedom of voice and vocal improvisation and how all of those are aspects of what it means, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, to walk as a free being, to sit as a free being. So that's a little bit of what's lighting me up and where I've been these last years.
Thank you, Carl. Oh, it's such a complex question, isn't it? And I feel like, lately, instead of listing off all my many things, I've simplified to say I'm a teacher and a writer. That can be a simple umbrella that includes all of those. But I'll just say, and I know we could really riff on this as we do often in conversation with each other, that oh gosh, we share similar history and body-based somatic work and yeah, meditation and grief work and following the call of soul. I come back again and again to this question that I think I've been carrying probably since I was like 5 years old and looking around and like, where are the wise grown-ups? Where are the elders? I came in kind of knowing they should have been there and weren't abundant in my childhood. And so I've spent a lot of time, really since I was a teenager, sitting with a lot of wise elders. And I'm really interested in using whatever skills or tools that I have toward, including myself. I'm not saying I'm fully cooked and ripened over here, but how to ripen adults and elders who can meet these times, and the Martine Prechtel would call it a civilization, not a culture that we live in, doesn't tend to do that ripening unless you're really seeking it out intentionally. So, yeah, I'm really interested in ripening devoted adults and elders in all our unique expressions and weirdnesses, but who are in service to life, who remember, that's why we're here. That's what's here for me in the moment.
Beautiful. Thank you both for sharing all of that. I've always felt from you both this like deep devotion and dedication to, like you've said, Carl, like that freedom, and how that's been showing up through the voice and the body percussion and música de círculo realm that you bring in, but also through the grief work that you both do and the contemplative sitting practice, this kind of way of really questioning, like, what is the self also, right? And then also grounding it in the body and, yeah, holding that question of how do we grow ripened adults, right? This is like a really deep inquiry for our civilization right now, right? How do we actually grow some culture instead? Um, and I'm curious if either of you or both of you want to share um, perhaps a prayer, like one prayer. I know we're holding so many prayers right now with everything that's happening around the world, but if there's like one prayer that you would want to share with listeners that you're holding and living into right now.
Well, I'll share one that was just on my mind this morning, and I don't know if I'll get the words exactly right, but the feeling this and this was from Jaya John, where he wrote, "It's not that we have so much to learn, it's that we have so much to remember, and that we are living in these centuries, these colonizing centuries of the great forgetting, and may we turn toward this new era of the great remembering. And we do not need teachers of cool instruction, but we need homecoming." And I think that's something that's so central to all that we carry is this like dusting off of capacities or ways of being that have been forgotten. And may that happen across the globe, that people can remember how to care for one another, how to listen to the earth, how to open to the imaginal, so that, what this earth is dreaming through each of us could look and lean more toward healing and less than this consumption and violence and, disconnection and all that's happening. That would be my prayer.
I love that question and I love that prayer. Thank you, Carl. I want to say, yeah, what you said, and I'll add to that too. And I want to share my riff on a prayer I learned in the Tibetan tradition probably 30 plus years ago that I say almost every day, and I'll riff on it in my own way. And it's this. May the precious mind of bodhicitta, that's the awake heart mind, and that both the caring heart and the remembering of the vastness, may it awaken. And where it has awakened, may it not fade away, but grow and flourish infinitely forever. And may the precious recognition, this is interesting because the original prayer says emptiness. And I don't think in this context where we are, it lands in the way that the prayer means to, at least my understanding. So I say, may the precious recognition of interbeing arise where it has not arisen. That remembering that we're connected with all of this, and not only what we can see, and the wild ones, and the mountains, and the water bodies, but the future ones, and the ancestors, and just remembering that great web of life we're a part of. And where it has arisen, may it not fade away, but grow and flourish infinitely forever. And the last one is, may the precious conduct of nonviolence arise where it has not arisen. And where it has arisen, may it not fade away, but grow and flourish infinitely forever. So I'll say one other short piece, which is a prayer I say every day. Just right now, I'm feeling this great mother underfoot, really connecting with this great earth and her energy and life force that is love of life, right? So I say, for me and for all of us, may that love of life, for life itself, flow through us unhindered. That's my prayer. I want to ask you that too, my friend. Tell us your prayer that's with you in the moment.
Yeah, thank you both. Thank you both. May it be so. May it all be so. My prayer right now that I'm holding is really about remembering for me. And if I could just say it in 3 words, may we remember. I feel like that is what I'm dedicated to in this life, is really remembering our long legacy of living sacredly with each other, with the more than human world, with the ancestors and the spirit world. There's so much fracture there, so much forgetting. And I think, yeah, just along the lines of what you both shared, this is a process of remembering. That has been my personal direct experience. And anytime that I experience that with other people, what then arises from that remembering, that feels like our original inheritance. That feels like that's the way it was meant to be. Like when we're in village together, when we're singing and dancing together in ritual, weeping together, laughing, with full bellies. So that's my prayer. May we remember. Hmm.
I'm just chuckling. I can't understand why we're such good friends. I mean, we really, really, I feel that so deeply, are so aligned in carrying these prayers, and it's what our lives are about, this remembering. Thank you.
Hmm. Yeah, I see. Yeah, on that note, Carl, when you said homecoming, there was a topic I wanted to speak to you both about. I was contemplating, I wanted everything to be fresh, but I also was trying to pay attention to what themes were alive for me, specifically when I thought of you both. Lately, I've been pondering the kind of as above, as belowness of the times that we're living in, and how our kind of collective, unresolved, and unmetabolized issues are feeding on many of our lives, like a hungry ghost looking for a kind of vulnerable or appropriate host, let's say. And how in these times, the technology of family and village, which is a part of our long legacy of being human animals, and I went back onto your Refugia webpage, which I want to get into later on. But one of the topics was reweaving of the tattered cloak of belonging, as you both have put it, and how perhaps the technology of family and village has been relegated, in some ways, to the back of the priority list, or the bottom of the priority list of being human. And in the modern world, it's kind of been seized by like disembodied, ancestrally bereft, grief avoidant, hyper politicized, post capitalist agendas, right? So that's the way that we see this kind of versions of family or community showing up. It's kind of like a shadow. And I think about, with the as above and as belowness, that so many families are fraught with conflict, untended intergenerational trauma and abuse, and kind of lack of authentic bond that we have, so that we can then have enough rooting and structure to then go out into the world and live our calling, right? And for me, like, having worked as an integrative therapist and a ritualist and seeing so many people, that so many families are distraught or fraught, with these symptoms that I've just named. And yet, as you were both just alluding to, there's this bone memory that we have that it's meant to be a different way, right? And having spent so much time with you both, not only as co-facilitators in work online and in person, but also as friends, with Mesa, with your son, with your animals, with the land that you tend, with your community connections. I've always admired your devotion, your devotion to this technology of family and of village mind. And I'd love to hear from both of you if you could share a little bit of what you conceive of as the importance of family, of parenting well, how that extends out into your approach to cultivating community and village mind, and that contribution to the soul of the world, because I feel like that's missing. There's a lot of talk on social movements, political movements, and all of that. And yet I see at the very micro level of family, it's like we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, and just left that. And I would just love to hear you both riff on, or beatbox on, Carl, if you want to, about, yeah, this technology of family and community. I'll leave it there.
Oh, well, I love that question. And I just want to say as you ask that, I feel so grateful for this little family that I live with right here, Carl and our son and our animals and then our people when, like you and Aliona come stay with us. We totally consider you family and our extended families. Also, I just feel really grateful. Not that we don't have some difficult ones in our field, but it's really interesting. Like, I'm just thinking of parenting, and we have such an amazing kid, as you know, and he's really been steeped in an environment of respect and love and listening. And I feel often like so much of what we're trying to remember or, help students remember is in that orientation toward parenting. Like I often think of this with some of what I'm teaching, for example, right now in my women embodied groups. I feel like I want to offer, and even other places too, like thousands of doorways out of the culture and the mindset of domination. In my experience, we're taught to, dominate your body and put it through its paces and, do what just a domination attitude. And with our feelings and our inner life, stuff it down or control it or make it behave according to how you think it should be. And the land, we so live in a civilization that is rooted in this culture of domination. And we've tried to root our family in something radically different than that, and that starts in my own relationship with my inner life, trying to move out of a model of domination. So we are really blessed now that our son is a teenager that we have this relationship that's just so rooted in respect and he feels that, um, and then what else about technology of family? I think it's so interesting to sit with that word technology and I'm like, I don't know, what is technology? Like one of my devotions is family dinner. I love to cook and like gathering, just that regular ritual of gathering together at least once a day around a table to slow down and eat beautiful food. And I don't know if I'm in the vein of what you're interested in and what you're asking about, Alexandre, but this is what comes to mind right now. Love. And, I think there's something of, I was talking to a friend recently who has kids close to our son's age, and just this basic orientation that is so different than what my parents knew how to do when I was young, which is like, we're on your side. We're not trying to be against you with the school and dominate you and make you fit into this particular shape, but really like, you know, to love and support, the beings who we consider family and let them be their unique selves and, try to keep calling out to that. That's what I got.
Well, as Erin and I have a shared nervous system, she just shared exactly what I always feeling in that moment. Um, yeah, I think the respect is such an important foundation. One thing that came to mind is this line that came from Russell Delman, who is a friend and a really important mentor of ours around integration and his embodied life work that wove together Feldenkrais and Zen Shikantaza and focusing or inner listening work. And he had this term of all one life and how there's a certain way that you are that is consistent, whether you're teaching or meditating or going for a walk in the woods or being with friends or being with your children. And that's been really helpful as the as above, so below, that we're carrying the same values, that we're behaving in the same way, that we're bringing this respect for life. I think we also have practiced both like cushion practice and being able to sit with our own selves and be with our inner children or complexes when they come up. Really lean in that Gottman ratio way, both in our relationship with each other, but in life that we're tuning toward, for those not familiar, what is it, 1 to 5, maybe? The Gottmans who had this remarkable capacity to predict whether a couple coming in would stay together by how they interacted in just a short amount of time, and that for a relationship to thrive, there had to be at least 5 moments of positivity, appreciation, affection for every moment of criticism or shutting down. And I think that that's such a helpful capacity to grow in our movement, in how we're tending to life, the importance of praise and gratitude and beauty in how we are with each other. And I also just want to say, like, it's hard for people out there with families, whether you have kids or not. Like, these are really challenging times with how how much we're holding, how many devices we're interacting with, how much there is to distract us and numb us, the incredible amount of suffering and violence that we take in on a day-to-day basis, the just the hustle of all that has to happen in late stage capitalism. Like, it's not easy to have these points of like refuge. And I think that's something that we're so grateful for too, because for many people, the home or the primary relationship isn't that sense of like, oh, I can relax into this and feel safe and feel held, that can actually be one of the most primary struggles. And I think we're really blessed in that, shared environment of our home and family, that it is a deep, deep refuge for each of us.
Yeah, thank you both for speaking to this topic. And of course, I want to leave some more space if there's anything else that begins coming through for both of you on this topic. But I I appreciate being able to talk about this because it feels like it's a bit in the shadows, and what is happening on the external world stage is taking up a lot of the space. And I'm curious for you both, how do you navigate, like in these times we have these things called nuclear families where, there's so much more importance put on just our little, plot of land in our house, the people who live under our roof. And how do you both kind of dispel these kind of time spirits of late stage capitalism, of colonization, of ancestral disconnection, honoring that you have a son and you have like a family, right? An immediate family, extended family also. And then also, how do you bring in these qualities and values into community so we, like you both have been saying, contribute to remembering something that we know in our bones? How do you hold the tension between those two? I imagine it's not easy, and I'm saying this from the experience of not having children yet. So I'm curious if you both would share about that.
When you say the tension between the two, remind me what the two are.
Yeah, the tension of at-home life
Yeah.
For example, with Mesa and tending to your third body, or you and Carl also. And then going out into the world and weaving community, weaving village out there also with non-blood relatives, for example, and also the more than human world.
It's just a great question, isn't it? What do I want to say? I notice that in the way you're asking it, it sounds as if we've got this figured out. And it is a tension, right? Of like, I don't know how to answer that. I'll say, we're really lucky to have lived here and been weaving community here for a long time, like more than 30 years. We've been teaching locally and hosting teachers locally and having friends and building relationships locally. So we can go out, and last night I went to a store and like, oh, this person I have deep connection with, like I feel very grateful to feel woven into a web of relationships with the humans here. And then likewise, I guess in our online work, and we're so lucky, like right now, how magical that you in the Sacred Valley in Peru are family. And here we are in Salt Lake City, and we can connect, and we are weaving our relationship through, keeping in touch with each other and collaborating on things and just sharing the realness of life. We're blessed to have relationships with people who are really oriented in that same way. So I'm just thinking of that word, the very unsexy, but very actually soulful word of like maintenance, maintaining connection. And it's really sweet to see as our son is growing up and now is a teen, like weaving him into these relationships too over so many years. And I'm so grateful that I feel like he's held in the web. So it's interesting because you know me, I'm like you, a super introvert, which doesn't mean I don't love people. I absolutely love people. I just need a lot of quiet alone time um, to be my sane and connected self, to really do that remembering we keep talking about. I remember a lot of the more than human relationships with the unseen world and the more than human world when I'm alone. It's like it lets me be in communion in those other ways. And yeah, it just there's some I'm picturing this little lemniscate going, the infinity symbol of back and forth. And one part is I love being in relationships with people who are committed to a path of growth and who are adults and who are, compassionate with their own inner lives. So you can feel that and that we can give each other space, but we stay connected. And yeah, I guess it's a dance. And I'll say, now that our son is older, it's also really different. The parenting, something shifted big time with puberty and how much he wanted to always be in the same room as us, for all these years before. And now, oh, he wants his space to go do his thing too. And we stay connected. But it's easier at this phase right now than it was when it's kind of all consuming.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all that, Erin. I also just really want to clarify that I don't think anything that we're going to be sharing is some kind of answer that will feel complete, I think, for any of us. And I just want to relieve any kind of pressure to
Yeah.
be that way. And also that I feel like a lot of people feel stuck with what the overculture has to offer or civilization has to offer right now. And just hearing how you're both holding that tension, not as experts or people who've, figured things out, but, how you've found ways to actually feed a good way, a sacred way, right? Of, yeah, being inside family and then going out into the world because it's not easy, right? It's not easy for anyone right now. I don't think anyone has it easy.
Yeah, I come back again to that all one life, that when we're teaching or facilitating or when we're making dinner or doing the dishes, that we are who we are and we're loving how we're loving. And I was thinking of these beautiful, powerful 4-day grief rituals that the four of us have held with Aliona. And it's an extraordinary space, and it's this place of deep grief and also deep beauty and deep. So many people have reflected, like, oh, I've longed for this way of being with other people. And as we've shared when we're together, that is how we are over that weekend, is how we are in our life. Like, we sing and we dance and we weep and we read poetry and we get to the depths and we linger there. That it really is. It's not like a show we're putting on. It's like this is how we can be together as human beings.
Yeah, I've so valued those times. It's like beautiful to co-facilitate with you all, but just letting all that dissolve and just being in community in that way and being together in that way is such a gift. Um, I'm also thinking of, you touched on this, Erin, but like friendship and even the context of me wanting to do this with you both. Really, it's from the basis of friendship. And I'm not only thinking about friendship, but I'm thinking about mature friendship. Like there's a sense of maturity there. And there's a quote from John O'Donohue. Um, what did he say? Friendship in particular should be a wonderful kind of togetherness where each of the friends encourages and liberates each other into the fullness of their own potential. And you've both spoken about, even in parenting, like how you follow your practice, how you're following your dharma or following your calling, your path, and how important that is. Um, and I'm curious to bring that into the realm of friendship, like how we actually encourage and inspire each other to live our genius. And yeah, what have you both learned about friendship and what are your griefs around that? What is the beauty? What have you learned that you would love to share in this moment?
Mm. I'll just say, I loved that quote from John O'Donohue that's so beautiful about both the encouragement and liberation, you know. And I don't know if this is Mark Nepo himself or if he's quoting someone else. So he's got a beautiful book on friendship, but it's described as the masterpiece of nature. And I just think that is so beautiful. I experienced that in our friendship, and this sense of, I love what you said about mature friendship, this sense, there's no competition, there's no subtle agenda or passive aggression. It's like, oh, really, I want the best for you. I want to be able to support you in, you know, your full blossoming, unfolding freedom, all of it, And I feel that in return, and it's a gift. And it's a gift to have our son, witness friendships like that and steep in that, and how easily we say, I love you to the people we love. It's not like a rare thing. So you've seen our refrigerator is covered with photos of beloveds in our life. And I love, really, it's like almost like an altar of kinds, you could say, for me to, when we get top heavy in thought and disconnected and stressed, as we all do sometimes during these times, I can just stand in the kitchen or while my tea water is boiling and look at this web of relationships and like, oh, thank you for being my friend. And I love you and I want the best for you. And it's such a gift when we can support each other in that way. Um, Oh gosh, it's really funny. What is the grief in relationships? Like I guess someone was commenting in my group that I just ended a couple hours ago, so it's on my mind this morning that I wrote something recently on my Substack about like um I know what's right for me. I have no need to know what's right for others. And um, I think grief comes for me when I'm in a relationship with someone where they're trying to assert they know what's right for me or others, like um, a dear friend was describing her love of being in water. And she said, I love that feeling so much because I feel both held and free. And I thought, that is what I want all my relationships to feel like. I want you to feel held and loved and free, like no hooks, no agenda, that I'm trying to yank you where I think you should go, but just love you. And, yeah, that's what I got right now. What a sweet question.
And you both are so good at being friends. You know, that's something that I've just appreciated so much about our connection. Like, I can go to Singing Canyon with Carl and we can just play djembe and sing and beatbox in a canyon and revel in the beauty of Mama Nature. And we can also go out and have a laugh, and really have those full-bellied laughs and joke around, make music together, enjoy a meal together, cook for each other. There are so many of those primary satisfactions that we relish together, right? It's so natural also.
Mhm.
But yeah, Carl, love to hear from you too.
Yeah. Well, I was just riffing off of what Erin shared, just the like teary gratitude reflecting on the miracle of these relationships and friendships and just taking in those photos on the fridge and like more valuable than any money, the sense of like this is what being human is about, loving each other, supporting each other. And I think of that mature friendship and how we can support one another in becoming ourselves. So, like Aaron said, to let someone be free to have their seasons of unfolding or their seasons of availability or needs, but that at the root is like, I want to support you in becoming so fully Alexandre and bringing and offering the medicine and gifts that this world needs from Alexandre. And like, how can I do that? And when we can bless each other and support each other and feed each other in that way, it's such a, it's such a miracle. It's such a gift. And I'll riff too, for listeners who don't know the term primary satisfactions. That feels like a deep root in friendship for me. So this is a term that Francis has used to describe the ways that our spirit and soul have evolved over the several 100,000 years. What are some of those things that humans have done? Caring for children, caring for the dead, making meals, hunting, drumming, dancing, listening to dreams, being in silence together, and that these are the things that really leave us satisfied, that there's no wanting outside of that. And I think that's also a way, like when we can be together in these deeply, deeply satisfying ways with each other.
I just want to also name, and I want to hear from you on this too, Alexandre, but like we're talking about all the beauty of it too, but also that essential part in friendship to hold each other's suffering, to be with each other through those seasons of descent. Uh-oh, I'm frozen.
I can still hear them.
Okay. Yeah. Um, yeah, to be with each other's suffering compassionately and non-judgmentally and, to love each other when it's hard also. Um, and I guess I just want to name this. I'm curious about the asking of the griefs in friendships, but I think when they're not mature friendships or when people come to connect and there's like A subtle agenda or a jealousy or a not actual ability to, you know, cheer each other on, but when other forces are at play that aren't conscious, perhaps, that's caused some grief, I know, for each of us. But I'd love to hear what you
Hmm.
want to say about any of that too, because you also are a magnificent friend.
Yeah, I wanted to bring in the element of grief too, because I want to recognize for probably most of us that it's not an easy endeavor to find mature friends, right? And to develop these connections. We live in such an egocentric society, you know, how James Hillman said, we live in a sibling society. We're all competing, and it's like we're trying to. I just finished reading the Continuum concept that you gifted us about, and that book is about, for listeners who don't know, it's really about an older way of viewing child rearing and raising children. And yeah, I just think about how much lack of primary satisfactions and nourishment that, we're all so hungry for, that when we meet with another person to befriend them, sometimes how difficult it is because there are so many masks and so many, yeah, agendas and ways that we've been socialized that get in the way, right? Like I'm thinking even because I speak different languages, like in English, how we say, how are you? But it's a formality. You're not really asking, like, really, like, how is your heart? For example, it's a how are you? It's a good, and the person's almost expecting that you're just going to say that. And it's almost just like an extension of saying hello, right? Just greeting someone. And I'm thinking about the men's work that Carl and I have done, and it was an inquiry that we asked the men, for example, like what are the questions that really get or invite someone else into deeper levels of connection. And we spent time inviting all the men to really write down all the questions. And it might feel a bit trite or something, but in these times, that's where we're at, right? In trying to evolve again. But also, what comes up for me is a slightly other topic, but still on the line of friendships. And we've all riffed on this many a time, just around the need for self-examination, self-reflection. Of course, with a sense of compassion and a sense of rootedness, but it's really difficult to be in a mature friendship without any sense of self-reflection or contemplative practice. And I also think of how Francis Weller often speaks about the soul quality of restraint, right? Like giving some space and time to really reflect, for example, before projecting or accusing or blaming, because that also feels like a remnant of this war that's happening all over the world, right? We're at war with each other in that way and projecting so much. So I'm also thinking about the need for self-reflection, compassionate self-reflection and practices to be able to look inside and see from which place are we relating to our friends or people that we're wanting to befriend. Anything that you both want to share on that?
I love this conversation. And it's so important. And I think it's, again, like it takes some devotion to develop that in the context that our culture does not ripen people in that direction. And I was thinking about how, for many of us, this was certainly my case in education, going to school. Learning is about having the right answer as quickly as possible. And if you don't know, you sort of should pretend you do, which none of which is learning, right? It's like it's a performance. Maybe your heart or soul isn't touched by that. And we'll see if Carl's having the same thought that I am right now, as we do sometimes. But we refer so often to this wonderful teaching, Stephen and Andrea Levine, They have a program called To Love and Be Loved, the difficult yoga of relationship. And I quote this all the time, but Stephen said something that I think is so important. He was such a compassionate being, he was so loving with people in their depths of grief that his very being would have them just, laughing, crying, so touched. And someone asked him, "How did you become so kind?" And he said he was surprised by the answer that came out of his mouth, and it was by noticing how unkind I was. Like that is a willingness to do the self-examination and not the performance of the right answer. And, you got to have some humility and a whole lot of self-friendliness, to be willing to, I don't even, I want to say like to be excited to discover where you're out of alignment with your own professed values. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I want to discover that. Like, because I'm also not going to beat myself up and shame myself. I'm going to learn and apply that to growth. So, yeah, it's essential for me and for the relationships in my life, to be with people who are committed to that kind of compassionate self-examination. I think if we're defended against that, we just can't learn, we're stuck. So yeah, I think some sense of humor and friendliness about that process because it's hard, when you see your own bullshit or you're embarrassed because, oh God, look what I was, trying to do, or some mixed motivations we catch ourselves inside of. I talk a lot about courageous loving kindness, just this brave friendliness toward those ugly parts we see. Because when we can bring that to them, they shift, they shift. So, Carl, was that what you were going to say?
Some of it, yeah. I just got lit up by so many different tangents in this conversation. Yeah, it seems like learning how to learn is so important. And it made me grateful that movement is a central thread in all that we do. And this line from Moshe Feldenkrais, where he would say, said it in two different ways. You can't do what you want unless you know what you're doing. Or when you know what you're doing, then you can do what you want. And that's a self-reflection, like when we can actually pause and take in what we're doing, not trying to get it right, but just like, can I have that reflection? Then there's something deeper that self-organizes. And when I think so much of the lack of curiosity we have, like it's got deep roots in colonization. It has deep roots in, original sin and basic badness. Like if I keep looking, I'm gonna find this core of sin versus from a Buddhist perspective of like, oh, we're basically good, radiant, loving beings. So if I keep digging, if I find a contraction, it can float in this basic goodness and this warmth. And that can be, whether working with back pain or working with a particular tension in the heart or a difficult relationship. It also brings me to this great line from Pema Chodron talking about Maitri, or this warm, welcoming friendliness, how it has this magical quality because when you bring it to contracted, difficult, challenging places, something begins to soften, something begins to become more workable. And when you bring this friendliness to beauty, to the values that you want to embody, then it deepens, it becomes more instantiated. So that feels like a key to self-reflection, is having something that can see what's there with warmth and allow the shadowy stuff, the difficult things to be greeted with kindness and not like that they're going to get fixed or ostracized. Yeah, there's a lot there.
Hmm.
I want to hear you too, because we talk about this all the time, and I I want to hear you rip on this too, bro.
Yeah, and I talk about this all the time with you both. Yeah, I was playfully thinking about Martin Prachdel, I'm just hearing his voice like transcending life, that's bullshit. I'd rather compost the bullshit and make more life, right? And I was thinking also, and we've all spoken about this a lot too, but especially in the last couple of years, my experiences being in more global, diverse communities, just having the courage to decenter ideologies doesn't mean that we can't have ideologies and perspectives and opinions, but centering relationship and kinship and centering right relationship, I think that's maybe another way, maybe an earth-based spirituality way of thinking of it, like this sense of being in right relationship and that, yes, everything is interconnected, but there is that swinging door of our inner life and our histories and our wounds that are often intricately interwoven with what is happening in the external life, right? And how do we grow the capacity to discern when something is showing up that isn't actually showing up in the present moment, but it's something from the past carrying over, and we're dreaming up the person in front of us to be something or someone that wounded us, right? And I agree that takes so much humility, right? And it takes growing a heart that can be compassionate enough to hold things that feel confronting, right? And perhaps maybe that's where there is a sore spot for a lot of folks in today's world is there hasn't been a lot of compassion. Or I even think about the previous generation. I've mentioned to you both my parents they didn't have any memory of being told that they were loved, that they were hugged, because the survival mentality and the context of the times that they lived in didn't, the environment wasn't conducive to that. And yeah, it just makes me think of Wendell Berry's quote, it all turns on affection. And how do we begin with a sense of affection rather than this cold kind of needing to point things out in others? Because so much, it's like fertile soil, right? Like so much can grow from a soil of affection, but from shame and blame, it's difficult.
Which takes me back to friendship, because like how we can be a loving presence for someone else when they're caught in their contraction, and what a gift that is. I just recently was having a conversation with Francis Weller, and I said, what was the most helpful thing? Because he talks a lot about shame and his, decades in the beginning of his life just paralyzed by shame. I said, what was the most helpful, if you could say one thing that was most helpful? And he said, friendship, really, because I was living in the terrible fiction that I had to love myself first. And I absolutely could not do that until I, had the courage to confess to these few friends how ashamed I was, what was actually going on in my mind when I was acting like I was fine, and that they met me with, they could love me in that. So that capacity that can grow in ourselves through friendships that are committed toward, loving kindness and that held and free, like that quality of respect. Yeah, it is a masterpiece of nature, I think. And can ripen some mature adults.
This all makes me just think of Refugia and how that has sprouted for you both. And I mean, it was quite a new, I would say, a new dreaming that came into my field from you both. And you both have just opened registrations for your 13-month training and mentoring and container, depth container. And I'm curious if you could speak a little bit about Refugia. What is Refugia? What inspired you so much and brought you alive with Refugia? And maybe then after we talk about its dreaming, then we can go into a little bit more of what you guys are offering.
Well, I'll just say right away, I have to thank one of my beloved hero writers, Kathleen Dean Moore, who shared the story where I learned the word refugia from. And in the story, it's about Mount St. Helens, the eruption that blanketed this giant area and, ash and lava. And they thought it would be so long before life returned. But much sooner than the scientists thought, from this devastated landscape, life began to emerge, and they found it was from what are called refugia, these little tiny sheltered pockets where, you know, certain kind of seed survived and was able to float out and grow, or a little mouse was able to survive, or a little plant, or whatever it was. And she says so beautifully in the piece she writes about this, if destructive forces are at work in our lives, then our task is to build refugia. And it's both literally like, how do we protect life as we try to in our wild ecosystem of a little urban yard? But also, how do we make a relationship, a friendship that is a refugia, a refuge? How do we make spaces where we can learn together, you know, in that vision in this world where so much is being destroyed right now? Social fabric, ecosystem on so many levels, languages, cultures, etc. Create these little spaces so that we can nurture something back to life again. And I have the goosebumps just saying this right now. So when I first read this story about 10 years ago, I was so struck, like, oh my God, that's what I have to do with my life. I want to cry right now, how strongly I feel that. And it really helped me to understand all these threads we carry, from somatic practices, movement practices, meditation practices, neuroplasticity practices, grief work, gratitude work, the embodied life work, the inner listening work, all of it, I can understand as the way to make our own very presence a refuge, and that we can grow a community that is a refuge of people who then will go out into their places and also be a refuge, and imagine that spreading and growing, just like Mount St. Helens came back to mossy, tree-filled, biodiverse life. I really hold that intention for this work to function like that, so that we can grow, we can do the remembering, but also grow the skills that were not taught in the general culture for how to live like that in a way that we can and our relationships can be authentic refuge. That's what's here for me right now, where it came from.
Yeah, and I would just say that we're so excited to be able to weave these currents of wisdom and freedom and soul and what really supports ripening of adults and people coming in contact with their medicine and feeding it and then becoming refugia in their families and communities or with their students. And, I think from when Erin and I first met, when we were just young, deeply devoted practitioners, we've valued mentorship and elders so much. Like it was the true north. And I think for each of us, there's been this ongoing study of what does it mean? What are the qualities of being a student and being able to be shaped and receive teachings in a way that lead to being held and being free and unfolding? And what does it mean as a teacher to bless and call out to capacities in others without that top-down domination, without wanting someone to be like a replica of the guru or something like that, but this collective learning. And I love the view that Thich Nhat Hanh brought, that the next Buddha, the prophesied Buddha, Maitreya, isn't going to come as a Buddha sitting, one being sitting on a throne and kind of giving teachings, but that Buddha will be Sangha, will be the collective. And when we have a container where we can really learn from each other and steep in these primary satisfactions and in these practices. Like all these things that we've been talking about take practice and take soulful repetition. And there are so many forces and conventional reality or the overculture that take us in a totally different direction. So it's like we need to fortify these little sprouts, these little pockets of life, and that we're looking forward to doing that in community. As Francis Weller has often said, it's the solitary work we can't do alone.
I love this so much. It feels like it really ties together everything that you both have been working towards since you began. It really is like this locus of your sacred work. It feels really like coming home full circle. Just as you were both sharing, about Refugia, and thank you to Kathleen Dean Moore also for writing about this. I was thinking about Reunion Island, which is one thread of ancestry for me. So it's on my father's side, some of my ancestors who carry my surname grew up in Reunion Island. And there's a story from 1977 about a church that was right at the bottom of this volcano, an active volcano that was, all the time just spontaneously spitting out lava. And in 1997, there was a huge eruption, and the lava came down and went all the way around this little church and burnt and incinerated everything around it except for the church. And they ended up naming it Notre Dame de Lave, which means Our Lady of the Lava. And I was just thinking about that. Sometimes I think back to that because I went back to Reunion Island when I was younger with my family, and I always felt a connection to that land, even though I was born in Mauritius, which is right next to Reunion Island. And it made me think of Refugia too, of like the spaces that we really consecrate. They do develop some kind of protection around them. It's not that they're invulnerable or whatever it is, but I feel like in bios, I think spoken about this like of like sanctuary, refugia, like these places that we protect. We do develop some kind of maybe it's not an immunity, it's definitely not an immunity. We're all not immune to what's happening in the world. But it's almost like in friendship, like I feel like we've protected so much the sanctity of our friendship that any bullshit that's come through, it really has felt like there has been this protective shield there so that we don't get lost. And it feels in some way like these pockets of refugia. And I'm curious, yeah, what comes up for you guys when I share that, and does that resonate or not? Or
Yeah, what comes up is a passage from the Refugia, welcome page that Erin wrote that said, there's this saying that we were born for these times, and how to ensure that these times are also shaping us into our most authentic, our most natural selves, coming forth to bring whatever medicine, whatever we can tend to meet the demand of this time.
Yeah, I love that. And, we have a long history in the Buddhist tradition, and there's a lot about refuge, taking refuge, Sangha, which is the community, as a refuge. And you have to show up in certain ways for that to be possible, right? And that's also what we're inviting. And yeah, it is definitely our hope that it feels like that protected space where these essential, soul qualities and these essential rememberings can unfold and then spread and keep growing. I heard this quote at a fundraiser. I don't remember who said it, a Nobel laureate who said, small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have the capacity to shift the whole trajectory of what's unfolding. And that's really our hope, that in this humble way, we're building islands of coherence in our own presence, how we show up in our relationships with each other, in the space in which we'll be learning. And it's really interesting too, just this thread of friendships we keep talking about, that for me, my dearest friendships usually sprout in a place that's dedicated to some kind of learning like this. We find each other because we're magnetized towards something that really matters. So yeah, I hope that blossoms also. And we're so excited to have you and Aliona be a part of it as well. Thank you for coming.
And thank you
Sharing.
for the invitation. Yeah, yeah, we're so excited to contribute to that. And is there anything else that you both want to share about Refugia, about the actual offering? I would just love to give you guys a little bit of space to offer a welcome and invitation, if you'd like to folks.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I guess as we're talking about it, I think a warm invitation if any of this is magnetic. I was reflecting on it as we were putting this together, that Carl and I really have, and I know you have too, Alexandre, we have followed those underground intuitions toward these places of, I've got to go study this. I've got to put my time, energy, attention into this training. I love deep training. Even we schlepped our child and a babysitter over 3 years to go to another state to be able to steep in this deep training. Like, I don't know how we're going to make this work. We're going to make this work because this really matters. And that kind of education that we have steeped in is, another great wealth of my life. And for anyone who is drawn to go deep, I know there's so many things out there we can tap into and learn, and there are many great places we can do learning. And the intention is really to hold this as a strong container for these 13 months together. An image I've often shared with friends is like, because people think, a 6-week class is really long, and which blows my mind. Like, really? I think 13 months is short. Like, that we've condensed this down to that. It's not 4 years, it's just 13 months. But that you can't cook something in a colander that has holes where your attention is just leaking out all over the place. You got to have a pot and a lid is good. And then, something cooks in a container that can be really delicious. And we're holding that container. Yeah, starting in February, we're so excited about it. So, for anyone who's listening who's magnetized, please read about it. It's on our website, embodimentmatters.com/refugia, which is Refugia. And yeah, we are breaks off unabashedly pouring forth what we've got, to be of help during these times. That's what this is.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. You know, Erin and I we have a nose for the good shit. Like what works and how to set up practices and containers that work, and we love it so much that all of these ingredients that we're bringing are practices that we've run through ourselves over time, over decades, and we're also just like ordinary humans and have our faults and failings, but we're authentic in what we're bringing, and that when we can set up a context for these practices, they really do work.
I'm so excited for everyone who's already signed up and who will. I think they're just going to be so blessed with such nutrient dense presence and energy and practices. And you both are like walking libraries, and it's funny because you both I think what met at a coffee shop and working with books, and you both have been these scribes, of really committing to heart teachings, different teachings, quotes, poems, and I love that about you both, that you can bring that wherever you go without needing a computer and books. And then you've got your own soul, the way that your soul brings things forth and how you distill these things. I just love you guys so much.
We just love you so much. Thank you so much, Alexandre. It's always just such a deep gift to be with you.
Always, yeah, so grateful for the weaving of our lives and paths together, and grateful that may that extend for a long time into the future.
And thank you for the sweet request to interview us.
Yeah, thank you for saying yes. Yeah. As we close up, is there a poem? Is there something that you want to share from your heart in closing our time together for now?
I the line that's here with me right now, really interesting, surprising, is a Mary Oliver, a piece of her poem called Flare that has been won't leave me alone this fall. And it's really I don't even know if I'm going to say her exact line, but she's talking about her parents. That's in the context of her parents have just, or they've long ago perhaps been buried. And what, I kiss them goodbye. I give them thanks and courtesy and anger and good luck, but I will not give them complicity. I will not give them responsibility for my life. And it just makes me weep. It's such a fierce and beautiful. I'm not blaming anybody else. I am responsible for how I unfold this life right now. That feels like a really gorgeous, fierce teaching that I just want to bless each of us with, even in difficult times, the choice we have to decide how we want to unfold this life. And may it be beautiful. May we keep feeding beauty and more life. Anybody else have a poem? I know we all do, but
Well, I have an aspiration that each of us and each of you listeners, that may we become more ourselves, and may we live in a way that, we're at such a precipice on this planet right now. May we meet these times in a good way. May we live in a way that humans and more than human beings in the future could look back and say, ah, they cared for us. Like those are ancestors that really met these times and did all that they could to feed life.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you, Carl. Yeah, may it be so. I have one last request before we stop the recording, if possible. Um, if it's possible, Erin, for you to read your poem of A Tiny Bell is Ringing. I was really feeling that one today and just love hearing it from your voice.
I thought you were going to request that Carl does some beatboxing before we stop the recording. I'm going to
That's
look
what
up
I
his
thought
poem really
too.
quick.
On that note, while Erin is searching for the poem, if there's a beat that you want to.
A tiny bell is ringing.
Oh, I love you guys. This is so fun. Okay, I'm going to read this little piece I wrote. A tiny bell is ringing, ringing, ringing. Can you hear it? It is the ancestors saying, "You must remember how to live." Great grandmothers and great aunties, the old ones who know better than to be taken in by the bright shine of modern nonsense, and the large great ancestress with long braids, whom I met in a village in the dream time. She held my face in her two hands, looked me in the eyes, and said, "You must remember how to live." She told me without words that I must sing to earth. Then she invited me to be earth and see for myself how it feels. I dissolved and became earth, and I felt the people in her village digging, moving, changing my body with reverence, and this was good for me. Then I felt myself as earth today. Eons of abuse. People pretending I have no feelings, pretending I'm not even here. I need not name the abuses, you know them. You feel them happening still. When I came back to my human body, I wept. The earth showed me. The moderns don't even know I'm here, alive, feeling, giving, even now. When I woke, I knew I had to say with every step to the great mother underfoot, I know you're there. I say it with my footprints. She loves me to sing a little hum to her, a hum that says, I see you, great mother. I care. Sometimes I hum to her when driving on a busy road, through thickly paved and built up cityscapes, through exhaust and sirens and tall buildings and asphalt. I hum without words. I know you're there. She likes that. There is a tiny bell ringing. It is saying, this is an emergency. But instead of saying, hurry, pull higher into your head, tight and fast, seeking solutions, spinning frantic ideas, the tiny ringing bell says, this is an emergency, so please slow down. Sing to me. Feel me pulling you close. You must remember how to live. Let's love each other well for the time we have because a bell is ringing. Ringing, this is an emergency. Ringing, remember how to live. Ringing, slow down. Everything and everyone dies, and who knows when. So, in the meantime, remembering how to live includes arrive, be here, feel, soften, breathe, sing, weep, dance, rest, make beauty, love well. Can you hear the bell ringing? It says, be fierce enough to protect what is soft in the world and in your heart. It says, some things have been forgotten. It is up to you to remember them forward. It says, scatter seeds for the spring that will certainly come after the long, dark season that may last for generations. It says, scatter sacred seeds, seeds of possibility. Seeds sing too. Seeds dream big dreams. Protect their dreaming. As the bell rings, may we learn to listen, learn to hear, remember how to live.
Ooh, I have shivers. Can hear that tiny bell ringing. Bless you both. Bless you both on your paths. Bless everyone who's listening. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you enjoy this podcast, it's great if you want to share it with friends or post about it on social media. Also, you could make a donation to support the podcast or find out more information about our classes and offerings at our website, embodimentmatters.com.